I believe that I have some poems to share with you, always. And one of those poems is from the poet T. S. Eliot. He was born in 1888, and he lived till 1965. 70-something years. And his famous quartets are very, very powerful. I'll just read you a little bit to give you a feeling of Eliot's style. What we call the beginning is often the end. And to make an end is to make a beginning. I have an interesting story to tell you. My wife, Mary Helen, and I were at a cinema in Chennai. And it was a very beautiful film. I no longer remember the name of the film. But at the end of the film, there was a huge quotation from Sri Aurobindo. Can you imagine that in a movie theater? And he says, every good end makes a good beginning. And so here Eliot is telling us that very thing. What we call the beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. And every phrase and sentence that is right, where every word is at home, taking its place to support the others, the word neither diffident nor ostentatious, and easy comments. An easy commerce of the old and the new. The common word exact without vulgarity. The formal word precise but not pedantic. The complete consort dancing together. Every phrase and every sentence is an end and a beginning. Every poem an epitaph. And any action is a step to the block, to the fire, down the sea's throat. And then he says in the last part, I think his most important lines ever. We shall not cease from exploration. And the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. Through the unknown, unremembered gate, when the last of the earth left to discover is that which was the beginning, at the source of the longest river, the voice of the hidden waterfall, and the children in the apple tree, not known because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between two waves of the sea. Quick now, here, now, always, a condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well, when the tongues of flame are infolded into the crowned knot of fire, and the fire and the rose are one. See how yogic it is. Incredibly yogic. And it has always touched me deeply, especially those first two lines. We shall not cease from exploration. Isn't it right? Where do we go if we don't explore, if we don't try to learn, to grow, to expand our consciousness? Not so much our knowledge. Because if we want true knowledge, we have to go beyond the mind. We have to go to those realms that Sri Aurobindo calls the intuitive realms, where the exact truth of a thing can be found. And intuition and this intuitive plane is where all the great inventors have gone to take what they received. Brahms, the great German composer, said he could go into those planes and he could pick out any notes that he wanted and just bring them down. This is amazing. We don't access that in life. And therefore we always have this duplicity of good and bad and truth and falsehood and hot and cold and near and far. But the issue of Upanishad tells us different. It is far from us and it is very close. Do you have a poem to share with us, Nanisha? One of your poems? Okay. Could you do that?
Yeah. Immutable Self. High above the shores of mortal being, a mighty force from above descending guides our passage into true living, from where we source all our knowing. A wideness within embracing wholeness arranges our destiny in absolute oneness, the specks of stardust illumining our mold towards a peace we wish to forever behold. A witness Purusha standing apart, pouring Ananda in the silent heart, carries the journey of our becoming into the image of God our lives are seeking. The indwelling Ishvara awaiting patiently enacts his eternal drama most lovingly.
Thank you.
Ramji, I have a question.
Yes.
If one wants to elevate to the next conscious level, what is the easiest one to reach? And those who are in the yogic path, what is the first step that they have reached?
Good question.
Which consciousness?
Very good question. The first step always has to be to attain silence within. Call down the peace into your being. Be patient and wait. Amal Kiran once told me, when I asked him, if a line in a poem is not, you don't feel it's correct, you don't feel it's right, what do you do? And he said, appeal. Then he became very quiet, and after a few moments he said, if you are patient, there will always be an answer. So if we can go into that silence at least 5-10 minutes every day, just be there, offer ourselves, the presence will come down into you and you will know exactly what to do.
Thank you.
Should I do it?
Narad, I have written a poem.
Oh, I would love to hear your
Can
poem.
I read?
Yes, please. Can you read it loudly so we can all hear? Good.
Prayer, the link twixt me and thou, an icon of trust from ages past, and fear too grips the heart, out of leniency and loyalty, ages past the remembrance into thin air. A twist unheard saga, mother and treasurer, playmates, meandering news.
Very nice, thank you. Does anyone else have a poem that they remember that they could share with us? Even a small poem, even a few lines? Anybody? from the secret knowledge. Here's what Sri Aurobindo is telling us. We must fill the immense lacuna we have made. A lacuna is a huge gap. Rewed the closed finite's lonely consonant with the open vowels of infinity. A hyphen must connect matter and mind, the narrow isthmus of the ascending soul. So you see, this isthmus is a little piece of land that connects a body of water. And Sri Aurobindo tells us that we have to connect matter and mind, which is this narrow isthmus of the ascending soul. And then he says we must renew the secret bond in things. Our hearts recall the lost divine idea. Reconstitute the perfect word. Unite the Alpha and the Omega in one sound. Then shall the spirit and nature be at one. So beautiful. Now, I want to read a little bit about the mantra because we did a lot tonight in the Om Choir. And Sri Aurobindo writes so beautifully on it. As when the mantra sinks in yoga's ear, its message enters, stirring the blind brain, and keeps in the dim, ignorant cells its sound. The hearer understands a form of words, and, musing on the index thought it holds, he strives to read it with the laboring mind, but finds bright hints, not the embodied truth. Then, falling silent in himself to know, he meets the deeper listening of his soul. The word repeats itself in rhythmic strains. Thought, vision, feeling, sense, the body's self are seized unutterably, and he endures an ecstasy and an immortal change. He feels a wideness and becomes a power. All knowledge rushes on him like a sea. Transmuted by the white spiritual ray, he walks in naked heavens of joy and calm, sees the God face, and hears transcendent speech. An equal greatness in her life was sown. So we see that when we repeat the mantra, we open to planes that are far above our normal physical minds. Even the higher mind doesn't have that vast an access as the mantra. But if we go above the higher mind, just to the illumined mind, we catch something of the truth. And then if we can go to the intuitive mind, it really blossoms for us. Because the next step is the overmind. And very few have gone there. But even the overmind has duality. It still has this sense of right and wrong, good and evil, etc. But the moment we cross from the overmind into the supermind, everything is harmony and everything is beauty. Sri Aurobindo tells us that this world has been built for bliss, not for anything else. Mother says that truth, the living truth, will bring the pure bliss. And they're almost identical. So I'm happy to share that with you tonight. And You'll take up some other aspects. Do you have something? Oh, okay. Took a while to find it. This is a poem I wrote many years ago. I wandered through eternity. I wandered through eternity, seeking the one my soul had lost. Find her I must, in her my destiny. No effort spare, no counted cost. Without her, worlds would soon collide, and animal man would disappear, finding no place for lust to hide, nor death, nor hate, nor mortal fear. Now I see her flaming there, the mother of the gods of light, descending through the midnight air. No longer now our blinded sight, for heaven will on earth repose. On earth shall bloom the mystic rose. I'll share one more with you. A day begun and ending with the grace for your birthday. All resistance of the night had fled, when from the east a ray of beauty shone, and I awoke, her name upon my lips, and sweetness entering from the alone. With beauty beckoning, forthcoming dawn, I greet the wild-eyed singers on the boughs. What wondrous scenes awaken with the sun! The green lake mirroring the trees, the Georgia bird, the thrasher in the leaves, the cardinal in his brilliant summer coat, while from the nearest branch the chickadee reminds me the food is gone, scolding me. Across the silken waters skimming low, the great blue heron, gliding silently, prepares his stealthy day in utmost calm. A hunter, motionless upon the shore. And there are flowers chanting through the skies, surrender song, while noisy squirrels hide among the branches fragranted with dew. What joy it is to be alive this day, for 80 years will soon have come and gone, and I, young as always in my soul, cherish the earth, with lissom flowers decked, begin my walk among the great and small creations of a force divine at work. Evening will come, the lavender of sky lit by a crimson orb in slow descent, that golden once shall golden rise again. And now the dusk, as memories abound of fields that whispered to the silent soul of what is now and what is still to be. The cool night air, soft, caressing me, as the lapping water's melody resounds, and I, filled with peace, invoke the name, musing on light, as I sing my soul to sleep. When my wife passed away after a very difficult bout with cancer, I experienced grief for quite some time. And during that period of reconciling myself to a new life, Sri Aurobindo would send poems down. More than 1,500 came. More than 1,500 poems came. Perhaps some of them not too good, but I only take credit for the mistakes, not for what he gave me. So Let's talk a little about Savitri. Can any one of you quote even one or two lines?
The spirit of beauty was revealed in sound. Light floated around the marvelous vision stream, and honor its the immortal's joy.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else?
All can be done if the God touches there.
Yes.
On a height he stood that looked towards greater heights. Our early approaches to the infinite, our sunrise splendors on a marvelous verge.
While
While lingers yet unknown the glorious sun.
unseen. While lingers yet unseen
But
the
like-
glorious sun. Anyone else? I would like all of you to prepare something for next week. Just a few lines. You see what Savitri lifts our entire collective. It lifts us above ourselves. And it is so important that we can. You see, Mother said very strongly, She said, Savitri is the message. All the rest is preparation. She meant Life Divine, Synthesis of Yoga, Essays on the Gita. All of this is preparation for us, obviously. But Savitri is the message.
Preparation before we get to Savitri.
No, it's in a way, if we could go to Savitri first, we would understand that the others are preparation. And just the reverse. So, when we begin to read Savitri, it is mantra. Make no doubt about that. It is pure mantra. Mother said to Udar, who was one of her secretaries, Savitri is a mantra for the transformation of the earth. I've done a series on Savitri. It's about 20 different series. I think 11 of them have been uploaded so far. But since our friend hasn't come, I will hold off a little bit and read you a poem that was from a man who lived into his 90s, an American poet, Richard Wilbur. And the title of the poem is very, very interesting because it's called Praise in Summer. And he's going to show us the stupidity of the mind when it wants to become known, become famous. So he begins obscurely, yet most surely called to praise. So it's summer and he is called to praise, as sometimes summer calls us all. I said, the hills are heavens full of branching ways, where star-nosed moles fly overhead the dead. I said, the trees are mines in air. I said, see how the sparrow burrows in the sky. And then he says, and then I wondered why this mad instead perverts our praise to uncreation. Why such sabers in this wrenching things awry? Does sense so stale that it must needs derange the world to know it? To a praiseful eye, should it not be enough of fresh and strange that trees grow green and moles can course in clay and sparrows sweep the ceiling of our day? Oh, it's so beautiful, isn't it? So beautiful. Now, I have another of his poems, very short poems, and very humorous, but very deep. The first one is called, well, the title is Two Voices in a Meadow. So the first one is about the milkweed. I think we all know the milkweed. It's a weed that shatters its seeds like in the air on cotton. And so he says, anonymous as cherubs over the crib of God, white seeds are floating out of my burst pod. What power had I before I learned to yield? Shatter me, great wind, I shall possess the field. How beautiful. So the milkweed is speaking that it's a plant just as anonymous as cherubs. Cherubs are angels over the crib of God. And its white seeds are floating out of its burst pod. And then he says, it's only eight lines. What power had I before I learned to yield? Shatter me, great wind, I shall possess the field. The second poem is called A Stone. As casual as cow dung under the crib of God, I lie where chance would have me, up to the ears in sod. Why should I move? To move befits a light desire. The sill of heaven would founder, did such as I aspire. Lovely poem. Sure. Now, I would like you to read the first poem, and then the second poem, and then the third poem. There are three short poems, not very long, but they are from William Butler Yates, whom Sri Aurobindo praised very, very highly. He said that Yates had this great poetic quality. So let us hear it.
The title, When You Are Old. When you are old and grey and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once, and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace, and loved your beauty with love, false or true. But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your changing face, and bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled, and paced upon the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid a crowd of stars.
Nicely read. Thank you so much. So you see, he's speaking of this person who's now gray-haired and nodding by the fire. And he says, think of those who loved you. How many of those loved you?
The title, He Wishes for the Clothes of Heaven. Had I the heavens embroidered clothes, enwrought with golden and silver light, the blue and the dim and the dark clothes of night and light and the half light, I would spread the clothes under your feet, but I, being poor, have only my dreams. I have spread my dreams under your feet. Tread softly, because you tread on my dreams.
cloths, not clothes, but cloths. And so he speaks of these cloths woven so beautifully of different things, and he spreads them beneath her feet. We could say, I'll tell you a story. When I returned from the ashram in 1962, I wanted to do everything I could for the mother. And so I learned to hook a rug out of wool, very fine wool. And I made Mother's symbol and sent it to her. And her secretary, you may know her secretary, a Tamil fellow. Who was he? Took it. Amrita. It was Amrita. He wrote me a beautiful letter, and he said, Mother liked your carpet so much, she began using it immediately. And she put her feet, until the carpet wore out, she did. So Yates is speaking here about someone that he loved, who was now quite old, and how he would spread the cloths, but he was a poor man, and he didn't have much. So he spread his dreams beneath her feet. How beautiful. But then he says, be careful, because you're stepping on my dreams. Okay, next. Nice and loud. Yes.
Will arise and go down and go to King Street in a small cabin built there of clay and water made. 9 main roads will I have there. I have a help for the honey bale and live alone in the bee loud clay. And I shall have some peace there, for peace some droppings here. Dropping from the rays of morning to where the crickets sing, their midnights all glimmer and moon a purple blue. An evening full of the linnets wings, I will arise and go down, for always night and day I hear like the water lap, with low sound by the shore. Well, I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's way. I hear it in the deep air of the water. Thank you.
So what he's saying that is he wants to leave this world of so much busyness. And he wants to go to this little island of Innisfree. He wants to build a small cabin there made of clay and wattles. And he wants to live alone in the bee-loud glade. And what does he say then? I shall have some peace there. For peace comes dropping slow. I guess we have to read one more and share with you the song of Wandering Angus. He's an old man now, and he writes, I went out to the hazelwood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand, and hooked a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing, and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream, and caught a little silver trout. When I had laid it on the floor, I went to blow the fire aflame, but something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair, who called me by my name and ran and faded through the brightening air. Though I am old with wandering, through hollow lands and hilly lands. I will find out where she has gone, and kiss her lips, and take her hands, and walk among long dappled grass, and pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. Yes, it just awakens something of such beauty in us. We shouldn't try to analyze these poems. They are coming from a much higher sphere, and they descend into us with such beauty and such simplicity. Just think of that. To pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. And one last one, and we have to go. We usually begin at 7, so you're welcome next time. If you're here still in Oroville, please do come. This is a famous poem of Yates, and the first line of it has been made a very powerful film. It's called Sailing to Byzantium. That is no country for old men. The young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generations at their song, the salmon falls, the mackerel crowded seas, fish, flesh or fowl, commend all summer long whatever is begotten, born, and dies. Caught in that sensual music, all neglect monuments of unaging intellect. An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing, for every tatter in its mortal dress. Nor is there singing school, but studying monuments of its own magnificence. And therefore, I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium. O sages, standing in the holy fire, as in the golden mosaic of a wall, come from the holy fire, burn in a gyre, and be the singing masters of my soul. Consume my heart away, sick with desire, and fastened to a dying animal. It knows not what it is, and gather me into the artifice of eternity. Once out of nature, I shall never take my bodily form from any natural thing, but such a form as Grecian goldsmiths make, of hammered gold and gold enameling, to keep a drowsy emperor awake, or set upon a golden bough to sing to lords and ladies of Byzantium of what is past, or passing, or to come. Namaste. Namaste. Namaste.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, sure.
So for me, the way you said that, it doesn't, there's no value to analyze poem because these words are coming from up above.
Correct.
I completely understand that. But for me personally, I don't experience those things, and I do trust that they do come from a higher source. So, what would be a way for me to, so is it something that you read these over and over till something clicks, or it should click on in the first time, and if it does, it is not for you, and you, okay.
It is the first, and Mother speaks about it very clearly. She says, you begin reading Savitri, maybe 1 or 2 pages a day, no more. And she says you won't understand anything, and don't try to understand it with your mind, because it will go into your inner being, your psychic being. And gradually, after reading, after reading, after reading, one day you will say, oh, I know exactly what this means. That does not mean we shouldn't study the technique of poetry. We should understand what iambic pentameter means. And iamb is a beat, short, long, short, long. And Savitri is written in iambic pentameter. But if it were only iambic pentameter and you read it like that, it would become very boring. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night alone, in her unlit temple of eternity. Now see, the poet changes things. He puts things like we call anapaests, which we have in music also, 3 beats in 1. So it's good to study some of the technique, but to remember that Savitri is mantra. It is not ordinary poetry. Yates has a touch of the mantra, and so did A.E., who we studied last week and read so much of A.E.'s work. These poets that I'm sharing with you have brought something down from above, from those ranges. And we should feel them, as Matthew Arnold said, more in the solar plexus than in the mind. We should feel it here. And if we can, poetry will open to us very beautifully. Thank you all.